I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance
flag
to the
of the
flag
United
of the
States of
United
America
States of America and
and
to the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice
Indivisible.
for all. Okay, so I will make an announcement because this is a meeting, a Zoom meeting. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 20. And on March 29, 23, Governor Healy signed a supplemental 2023 budget bill allowing remote and hybrid meeting options for public bodies through March 31st, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. So I'm opening the regular meeting, and the first item on the agenda is to welcome Deborah Cholfi as the Westport Historical Commission representative to the committee.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi there. I'm replacing Garrett Stuck.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you.
I think you know most of the people on the committee. Deborah, you will begin to know them more, I think. So the second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of September 12th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, John Bell, to approve the minutes.
John Bell moves to approve. Is there a second?
Dale Weber will second.
Dale Weber, the second. Is there any discussion, any corrections? Well, I'll call for a vote. Roll call vote. Tim Caton? Say your
Yes.
name, please, Tim.
I'm sorry, Tim Caton,
John?
yes.
John Bell, aye.
Tim Gillespie?
You're muted.
You're muted. Tim? Deborah?
I think I have to abstain because I wasn't a member at the
That's
time
right.
of that meeting.
Deborah? Mark Staines?
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Tim Gillespie? Put your hand up, Tim, and I'll believe you.
Tim,
Betty played aye. I think that's unanimous with one
Well, I
abstention.
didn't get to vote. Dale Weber, aye.
Oh,
also.
and haven't got you. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, Dale. It's still unanimous. Okay, so as is unusual,
Betty, I think Tim was trying to abstain because he wasn't at the meeting.
Tim, are you unable to get sound? That's interesting.
He might have his computer mic off.
Tim, have you read the minutes? Yes or no? Yes, he can vote. He read the minutes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we're ready to, this is difficult if Tim can't get sound. It's very important Tim Gillespie have sound. So we'll let him work on it.
I'm gonna check
The
out.
first,
Oh,
sorry?
just heard him.
You heard me?
yes,
Now,
Really?
now we can hear
Yeah.
you.
That's crazy. Okay.
huh. Okay,
10 o'clock.
so it's unusual, but this year, all of the applications have come in for 1 month. We normally start getting them in October and November, but it didn't work out that way this year. So we will have all of them together. In some ways, that's good because we can do comparisons. I just wanted to start out that there's about 1.2 million which is being requested. We actually have 2 million available. Some of it is the new, and I will give you a table on this before next month. The estimated fund revenues for the next year, the interest we received on those funds which are deposited ready to be used, and the reserves, and the state match. So that's one thing you don't have to worry about, that there isn't enough money to cover this. But, okay. So
Would you rather I not have a presentation on?
I think this is pretty good. I can see everyone there. Yeah, this works out pretty well. Okay, we'll see what people want to be put up there, but I think it's okay to leave that up there for now. Does everybody agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the first project is the Westport Affordable Housing Trust, which is the category of community housing. And they would like, I've asked that they have their application, and I asked them to also put in the RFP. So who is going to present?
I think this will be a tag team between Bob Barboza and myself.
Okay, who's starting?
I will start because then Bob is going to fill in all the blanks.
So Craig Dutra.
Okay, first of all, we're asking for $300,000. The biggest item is going to be $200,000 for land acquisition. As anyone who knows anything about the real estate market, is that right now land acquisition is the most significant barrier to create affordable housing. And it's important for us to continue to build our reserves so that we can keep pace with the marketplace in terms of land. And this one is a RFP that we issued a month or so ago to get realtors, developers, and private property owners to who may be interested in selling land and making it available to us to purchase. We have done that. The due date is not until next week, so we can't give you any progress report in terms of where we stand in that regard, but we should have more information about what the proposals look like in a high level way at your next meeting in January. We also asked for $40,000 for the Affordable Housing Office. That serves several functions. One, it assists people that are looking for affordable housing opportunities in the community to get some information about where to find them, how to take advantage of them. They're also where people are looking to take advantage of our program, most significantly the prehab program. And the prehab program is designed to preserve affordable housing that may be falling into disrepair and need updates and renovations in order to keep its status as quality housing and in the category of affordable. And to get money from the prehab program, you have to commit to even having the house in a category of affordable or the property or classifying it as such. Bob? And what you fill in what I
We don't have any responses yet to the RFP, but we will be able to consider them until next June. And there was some discussion at the last meeting that we'll be extending that consideration deadline even further.
And we also discussed going from a more of a passive advertise the RFP to being more assertive in terms of doing outreach and looking for people that are lenders as well as developers on the committee to reach out to their colleagues in the field that might have a sense of opportunities that we don't have as committee members.
Yeah, so basically, this is the second half of the 2-year plan that we submitted last year for programs and activities. With the FY25 CPA funding, we'll have $600,000 in that land acquisition account. And of course, we're seeking another 200,000, so we'll have a balance of 800. Hopefully by this time next year.
Okay, are there any questions?
I have a question on the prehab. It's requested that there be 60,000 for the prehab. Is there already monies set aside for prehab?
We have a small balance, about $40,000 left in that account with the rehab application we just approved and funded. So the grant,
So it would be 100 then. If you get the 60, then it would be 100 that you'd have available for that sort of work.
yeah, the grants we have now are for a maximum of $21,000. And so we're looking to fund 3 of those per year.
Tim, you can just leave that.
And can you just take us through, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm asking questions, I already know the answers to this, but I just want to understand on the prehab, is there a grant application process that folks go through who are in an inventory of this type of housing that's already been built?
Yeah,
They
there's two basic tenets of it. You have to be income and asset qualified, meaning you have to be either moderate or low income household. Those numbers are on the website. It's not a heck of a lot of money these days. Well, your assets have to be limited, but the big sticking point is your house has to be assessed at $325,000 or less to be considered an affordable home, and those are becoming few and far between in Westport or anywhere else these days.
Is that 300,000 adjusted for inflation in any way, or is that a stated number that doesn't change?
It's been the same for the last few years. We've been running the program. We're going to consider increasing it just because the house values are just rising so fast. We're limiting our pool of applicants pretty seriously.
Yeah. And then I just had another question on the land acquisition fund. If you get this 200, then you'd have a total of 800. And that
Correct.
that could be even for just one single property, the 800. You don't have any limitations about that aggregation, or you have to split it up to some number. How does that work?
No, the RFP is asking for proposals to sell 8 acres or more that would be suitable for 20 or
I think
20
it's
to
30.
30,
30 units, yeah, 30.
30 units. So it would be a substantial piece of property like Nokachoke Village is basically what we're aiming to try to reproduce.
So the
The
idea is to
challenge,
aggregate enough funds so that you could get, a substantial parcel to develop 30 units.
correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Just a point, when we did Nokachoke Village, we had use of tax title property that the town had seized earlier. And so the land acquisition cost was not a major factor in terms of putting together the development plan for Nokachoke Village. We don't have those types of opportunities in front of us right now. So we're going to have to be in a position to purchase and acquire the property.
Craig, I think we paid $750,000 for that property.
We might have at some point, but
Yeah.
when
The town did.
Yes, it was a CPA grant, 750,000. The part that was seized was the other part that now is owned by the land trust.
Okay.
So it was 2 different parts. It was about 7 acres. I mean, it wasn't a large parcel, and we got 50 units on that. Isn't that right, Bob? 50
Yes.
acres?
50.
Yeah, so, I mean, 7 acres. So you could get quite a few places on it. The issue with this one is finding the land at a price that you can afford.
Correct.
One of the things I noticed was that you talked about it would be nice if there were the amenities near it, but it's not required. That sort of surprised me. I thought that when you looked at property, you were looking for them to be close to shops and transportation and all of that. So it's not required. Is that right?
It's not absolutely required, but if you look at a point system or desirability, all those things, come into play.
Any large-scale project has to be funded with state tax credits,
Right.
low-income housing tax credits, and they're all scored on points for things like, proximity to public transit or shopping or those kind of things.
John,
Neil,
you had a question?
Yeah, my question is, so you're gonna have, if we go through with this, it'll be 800,000. Does that mean you're coming back next year for more?
Yes.
Most likely.
Is
Likely.
So the duplexes like you built on Sodom Road are no longer a feasible thing?
well, it was input from the CPC that actually prompted us to pursue this route because you said that you would prefer that we get more bang for our buck. and go
Yeah,
for
I
large
don't
scale.
like that. I don't like that phrase, more bang for your buck, because we're going to add 30 to 50 units in a town that's supposedly in a structural deficit with its budgets. And, departments in this town are being stretched to the max. And we're going to add another 30 to 50 units on it. That means that's going to put more stress on departments. It's not really more bang for your buck.
If the people already live in Westport or plan to live in Westport and they have their children in school already, then you don't add to it, John. But I know what you're saying. If you have people from outside the community come in, because we have a lottery. But otherwise, it would be our policemen, firemen, teachers. That's something that we've been trying to get the trust to let us know sort of what is or if you're able, the composition of people who live. I mean, where are they from? Who live at Noquachoke Village?
Just keep in mind that when we use state tax credits and state funding, it's nice for us to be able to give preference to Westport residents, but there's broader criteria in terms of residency and that would apply to that.
Something you try to negotiate with the developer when you seek proposals to develop a project. You ask them to give you a local preference, and in the application stage for Noquachoke, we had a lot of Westport people applying.
Mark,
Apply, but did they get in?
Mark,
Yes.
Some do.
So the RFP, if I understand, is you're asking people who might have a parcel of land to who might be willing to sell it to you. Is this correct?
Correct.
And most people obviously trying to sell land are interested in getting the highest price, not the lowest price, and you want the lowest price to pay the lowest price. If a property owner can, let's say his property worth just 500,000 and he agrees to sell it to you for 300,000, is he eligible to take some kind of a tax credit for the 200,000? That's I forget there's a term for the distressed sale, or that's not the right term, but there is a term.
It's a good question for an attorney. I don't know the answer.
Deborah, do you know?
I don't think that's something you can get on your tax return to take a donation for reduction in value off of the fair market value. Usually they want to see something tangible or cash that's been donated. I mean, maybe you could do an appraisal and get the difference. I don't know. I think you'd want to get a ruling, or somebody who's going to be filing that return would want to be really comfortable with taking that deduction. I haven't seen that, but I don't do tax returns anymore. And I think you want to get
We
a,
can check that out with the
person.
land trust.
yeah, there
We
may
can
be.
check
I
that
know when
out
you
with
give
land
land without restriction, you do conservation easements and you get deductions for that based on appraisals and all that, but this property would then get developed. So I'm not sure
Deborah,
it's the
but
same,
this,
unless maybe you took a piece of it and did a conservation easement for part of it. And then
Deborah-
you could get the
Deborah,
rest.
this does get a restriction. It gets an affordable housing restriction, which is
Yeah.
similar to conservation or
Correct.
preservation. So
Yeah.
it does get a restriction on it that would be subject to, lowering of the tax.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
So what they're asking for is, what they are asking for. Does anybody have any other comments about it? John, are you opposed to it?
I'm opposed to I'm not opposed to the duplexes and the small projects. I'm opposed. I don't agree with the mega projects, the more bang for your buck project, because I just think the hidden costs, we don't take that into account when we build the large scale developments.
I think that that's something the Affordable Housing Trust might look into. Do you think we could get Bob Barboza? Could you look into that? That
Sure.
whole question and see what around the state, what people say, what's
Sure.
happened in Nookwachoke? I mean, they are paying taxes.
Yeah, but I think it's no different than any other kind of development. Look at Sodom Road. There's been 20 houses built there in the past year. What are the property taxes for those houses covering, municipal costs, public safety service, school costs? It's not much different whether you build 50 houses and put 50 families in them, or build 50 apartments and put 50 families in. How is there a difference?
Is there a difference in the tax on the property? I don't think so, but I don't know. Tim Gillespie?
Yeah, I just know my time on the planning board, when we were talking about development and the impact on the town, the people that ran the finance committee at the time were saying new housing is what we need so that we get more taxes. And we were always saying that on average, development costs the town money. It doesn't bring in extra money. Certain commercial developments bring in extra money. But when you have housing that particularly includes children, the services you have to provide far outweighs the tax revenues you collect. So that's sort of a general rule.
Right.
And affordable housing is likely to attract more children. And so it isn't a boon for the community, but what it is a balancing of the community so that you just don't end up with a town full of old people. You want to have a healthy, diverse community. So I don't think you can weigh the pros and cons strictly on the basis of what it costs the town to have new development. I think a healthy town has a mix of families and children and people that draw more in the way of services than others, but that's kind of the way a healthy community is. And if we try to discourage that, I don't see that we're heading in the right direction.
Well, I'm the one who answers the phone every day from people who are looking for housing, and most of them, honestly, are senior citizens. I'd say 60-70% of them. They're not young parents with young children. And if you go visit Nookwachoke Village, you'll see that most of those people are, I would guess, 55 and over, and there's very few young families there.
That's interesting.
That makes a difference.
And you can,
Just to point to raise on Mark's question, I just looked it up and yes, you potentially are eligible for tax deduction if the difference between what you are receiving for selling your home or land versus what it would otherwise be worth with this affordable housing deed restriction, the difference can be a deduction, yes.
Mark, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, and by the way, Deborah, thank you for that. Well, the other point I was going to make relative to Bob's observation that it's mostly elderly people, that's one reason that the current planning board would like to promote the development, and I think there's a new bylaw coming out for ADUs, accessory dwelling units, because there is an opportunity for somebody to build an accessory dwelling unit on their property and they can move into it because it's a smaller 900 square foot unit, and either their children who can move in and live there at an affordable rate, or they can arrange to some other way to get to rent that house, the larger house that is. But in any event, a lot of states like Vermont and other places are trying to promote the accessory dwelling unit because of the options that it affords.
I think it's by right in Massachusetts now. You can add one with a permit to any property.
Bob, can I ask you, what about, John has mentioned things with Habitat for Humanity. Any of those in the works, or are you, like you did on Sodom Road, you did the 2 dwellings? Anything in the works? Have you heard of anything going on? Do you have to pursue it, or are you pursuing it?
We look at the real estate listings all the times for suitable pieces of property, but the focus has really been this year on looking for a larger piece because everyone seems to be, expressing a preference for going that way. Rather than, it took us almost 3 years to get the Habitat project done. And we spent, less than $100,000, but we only got two affordable units out of it.
Isn't it also true though that by adding another 200,000?
Deborah, you need
Yeah.
to put your hand up, please.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll
Go
use
ahead,
use
I got
the hand. Oh, sorry. Did I jump the line? I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah, there was somebody else, I don't know. who
I didn't
said
see
it.
any hands up.
Okay,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, Deborah.
Okay, I just wanted to make a point that just because you have either 600 or 800,000 doesn't necessarily mean you'll use it all on one property. It's really just a reserve that you're creating so that you have the latitude to be able to act quickly if a property presents itself, and you're able to then put a real offer together. So it's not that you'll spend all 800 necessarily. You don't even know what's going to come across your desk from the RFP. So this to
Correct.
me looks more like a reserve that you're trying to just create so that you can be nimble in a market that's usually pretty competitive, and you need to be able to act if something comes available, whether it's larger or smaller. Is that
Yes,
fair?
that's correct, Deborah. That's exactly the argument that has been used to date, that they need to have a reserve available. And they are, qualified to get a certain amount each year from CPC. We don't make decisions at this hearing. We go into the public hearing in January before we make a decision. And are there any other statements, questions? Anybody from outside the CPC want to say anything on this topic? Okay, so the question now is, should we forward this to the January meeting to be considered in the public hearing for financing? Do we want to reduce the amount or to go forward with the 300,000? Does anybody have a suggestion on that or a motion?
I would move the project forward to our public hearing meeting.
Betty, I'll second that, because
Sorry.
I'll second it, John Bell, because I do believe it should go to town meeting and let the town people be the ultimate voters on this. So I will second that.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Further comments? Okay, let's take a vote. Tim Caton? Tim Caton? Maybe lost him. John?
John Bell, aye.
Dale?
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim Gillespie?
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah?
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark?
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. Tim Caton, are you there? Huh. All right. So 8 in favor and 1 was unable to vote. So we will move this project to the January public hearing. And Craig and Bob, we hope you will come then so that you can answer any questions that we may have. Thank you very much.
See you then. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next project is the Westport Bike and Pedestrian Committee. It's a recreation project for $12,000. We have Gail Rodericks here. I believe she's going to speak, and I don't know if anyone else is here.
I just,
Gail?
I don't think so. I invited a
Okay.
few people and they said they're going to try to chime in, but they're not.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So we are, let me just get this up here. We put in a request for a review for a project we're calling the South Coast Northern Route Scenic Route Feasibility Study. And this is including Dartmouth and New Bedford, but this request is only the Westport share. We also, Betty asked that we had the rec committee to review it. And so Tim, at any time you can chime in on that. Meeting was Monday. If that was acceptable. And this is, Tim, if I could go through the presentation, would that be good right now? I know you have the PDF. I'm
The
not,
slideshow, you mean?
You can take it down.
This?
there we go, yes. So in August 12th, we presented to the Westport Select Board. If we can go to the next page. Might have skipped one, I'm not sure. Did
That
we?
right? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so then, so the Westport Bike Group has been together for about 7 years, and Steve Willett was the person that started the committee. And this past May, we got awarded $65,906 for the Mass Trail grant. Now that is specifically for the rail trail across from White's. It's the extension of the Fall River Quequechan rail trail along the outer service corridor from the city line to, actually it's not going far to Sanford Road, but it's gonna just go to the Route 6 section. And that grant includes a local match of $10,000, which $5,000 of that came from the South Coast Bikeway Alliance, and additional in-kind services. And we can go ahead to the next slide. So this grant we're asking for is to fill the gap from Westport to New Bedford. It'll be, the whole route is 50 miles, continuous bike system, multi-use path, and bike lanes connecting routes that will go into Rhode Island and Cape Cod. And we can go to the next slide. So the process that we're thinking about is we're looking to connecting communities. So in addition to the Mass Trail grant, the Woodtopper Connector. We want to consider this request, which will be the portion of the northern route, which will be a 2.1 mile shared use path along the rail corridor from the Quequechan Rail Trail terminus to Sanford Road and to Old Bedford Road. And we can go on to the next one. So the Scenic Greenway, since 2012, South Coast Bikeway Alliance, Westport, Dartmouth, and New Bedford committees and SERPED had designed a mission statement with one shared vision, connecting our communities with share use paths. The benefits is recreation, exploration, exercise, and transportation. And we can go on to the next slide. So we call this Closing the Gap Feasibility Study, which we did get, if you remember, Keith McDonald made this request. I think that was completed in September 2020. And let's see, so that was phase 1, and the feasibility phase 2 was completed in 2022 with funding from Mass Trails Grant. And we can go on to this next slide. So these are maps of the proposed and potential future routing. So we did a feasibility study, and we had SERPED identify the best route, and we did this northern route. We did they also reviewed Route 6. And then they also reviewed a route that would go Old County down to Paden-Aram and come up to New Bedford from the southern part. And this northern route with a lot of open meetings became the preferred route. Route 6, there was a lot of wetlands that prohibited some of the rail along the train route, which is active. And then on the map on the right it's hard to see, but it's current heat map of the usage of bikes. And we can go on to the next slide. Based on our analysis, we had the input and regional municipalities, and they decided on the northern route, which is the one in purple there. We can go on to the next slide. Then we got funding. We were able to secure funding for Bay Coast Grant Bank, which the reward, we went to landscape architect to take this northern route and do concept drawings. So this be 3 drawings. One's on Old Bedford Road, the other one's Old Fall River. I'm sorry, in Westport, it'll go Sanford to Old Bedford Road, and then Dartmouth, Old Fall River to New Plainville Road in New Bedford. We can go on the next slide. This is the first concept drawing we got. This is Westport Sanford Road, north of Route 6. So this design here, you'll see the top one is original photo of where we're talking about, and then the overlay is the drawing. And so that would show you where a pedestrian would be, the cars, and then the bike path will be on the right. We can go on the next one. The second one is Old Bedford, south of 195. And we switched the side of the bike path to compensate when people come off of 195. They're going 65 miles an hour. We didn't want the bike riders putting them harm's way, so we put it on the right-hand side if we're looking north. And then we can go to the next slide. And then this is Old Bedford Road. Well, I guess that was the 195.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. But you can see how the bike path goes from the one side to the other. And we can go on to the second one, the next one. So we have supporting documents. Complete Streets identifies 4 priorities in the northern section with its own funding, which we plan to weave into this whole process. To make our case about why we should do this for the town in 2018, the master plan, Westport seeks to engage regional decision-making, increase regional, and work more with Serped, enhance some, I forgot, I can't hardly read what that is, but and the benefits to the bikeway in Westport will provide safe crossing at Route 6 and a connection to retail, hotel, and regional employers. What's also important to mention here, we're on the tip for Sanford Road intersection. So they'll put a safe crossing light, and that's a state funded project. Okay, we can go. Thank you. The benefits would, the bikeway would offer safe connection from rural areas to propose higher density areas along Route 6. And Route 6 currently has a high crash intersection at Sanford Road, and it will continue down Old Bedford Road. It'll have benefit access to the hotels like LaFrance's. Visitors could access this as a bike and walking opportunity. Let's see. Connecting to employers to provide safe and direct route for local employees, and for option for workers to reduce the reliance on their cars. We can go on to the next one. This one is MassDOT. When we got the Mass Trails grant, this is if you go on to the MassDOT site, they have priorities that they map out. We realized that Westport Quequechan portion was left out, so that's why we got the Mass Trails grant. So the support comes from our Westport Bike Walking Path Committee, so I'm the bike chair. We have the town of Westport, we've got the Board of Selectmen to sign off, the South Coast Bikeway Alliance. Then the DNRT is an organization in Dartmouth, which is Open Spaces, Dartmouth Pathway Committee, their select board, their CPC approved of their funding, and neighbors and feasibility study with community engagement. We can go on to the next. Let's see, we already talked about the Mass Trails grant, and then the September 10th of 2004, select board approved of their CPC request. Their portion is larger than ours, so they asked for more. We took the 3 cities and towns and mapped it out by the mileage and what our portions would be. And then New Bedford had a meeting earlier this month, and they got the approval for CPC. We can go on to the next. So the ask for us was asking the Board of Health to support development of preliminary design. A regional approach would be the ideal, but don't let the ideal stand in the way of the possible. Westport section would be a benefit for users as standalone, encourage neighboring projects, bringing people to our town for commerce, and supporting our town's stated goals. So we got the approval from the Board of Selectmen. Next, we'll seek funding for the engineering plans. And then finally, Westport seeks funding for construction. So that'll be Mass Trails application part 2, and then construction would be Mass Trails application part 3. Those would be funded by the state. And I think, is that the end? Tim?
It's quite a presentation.
That was the last slide.
Yeah, I think it's the last one. So, and then the application I submitted, I worked with Mike Burris, our town planner. And Betty, we talked about this one part, which was project manager.
Yes.
And Mike Burris is going to be responsible and the official person contact for our Westport portion, but we did get some exciting news. The South Coast Bikeway Alliance presented to SERPED this Monday, and they asked for assistance on managing the 3-community Northern Route Greenway. And this will be a Mass Trail grant that we're going to be applying for. So these funds are going to help with the match. And the meeting went well, and the comprehensive unit of SERPED is interested in helping us write the grant, manage the project, and comprehensive management would be written as part of the grant. And Jackie Jones, for those of you who know from SERPED, is offering assistance in her department for grant writing and public outreach. So to our answer, Betty, we do have a project manager. So that would be South Coast Bikeway. That would be SERPED, which will give us more weight when that grant application goes to the Mass Trails. And I
Okay.
think that's it. And I'll take any questions. People want to know how long it is. I have the amount of miles it is if they're interested. Or
Let's see. Does anyone have a comment or question? Mark?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Gail, and so make sure I understand all these costs here.
yeah,
You're saying in this, excuse me, in this proposal that the total budget of $300,000 covers the feasibility study for the entire northern route, and that of that 300,000, Westport's share is 60,000,
yes,
and your ask of that 60,000, you're seeking 12,000 from CPA. Have I got it right?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Well, and then somehow, let's see, I've got the thing in here. Okay, it does get a little confusing. So yeah, so the total cost would be for this portion of this process, 12,000. Then we have the tip for the safe crossing for the road, which the state's going to pay. We're going to also include complete streets to Sanford Road. Now that would be heading south, but there'll be a connection we'll be able to make with the complete streets with its own funding. And actually, I'm sorry, I said South Coast Bikeway Alliance gave us 5,000. I think they gave us $3,000. And let's see, we're asking for 15, but somehow the 3,000 extra dollars was going to be like almost like you called it a reserve. And so what's happening with SERPED taking a portion of 10% of the grant, that money may fold into our portion of contributing to having SERPED do that. But
So basically you're asking for 12,000 and you don't
yes,
see any further requests coming to CPC. Is that right?
that's at this point. It is lucid. They had the meeting with SERPED Monday, and Keith McDonald, which you know is a civil engineer, he's on our committee. He was mentioning something about, and this was just an email. We didn't decide on anything, but he said it was something like, let's see, he was mentioning that I think the community planners should be able to credit some of their time as a match, and we have the additional 3,000 from CPC. So we might not need extra cash, which would pay for the Serped having their portion that they're going to put in the grant writing.
Just a moment, Gail. Tim Gillespie.
I would like to report that the Recreation Commission did go over this plan and unanimously recommended advancing it to the Community Preservation Committee and the town.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Are there any other comments or questions from the CP?
I would move this project forward to the public hearing.
Just 1 second. Anybody in the public want to say anything? Okay, Tim Gillespie.
I move that we advance this project to the public hearing for
And
further discussion.
I will second that.
$12,000 for $12,000. Correct.
12,000, yes.
Okay.
Dale Weber will second.
Is there a second, please?
Dale Weber seconds it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, Tim Caton,
Yes.
yes. John,
John Bell, aye.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim Gillespie,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah,
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark,
Mark Schmid, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. It's unanimous. We'll see you in January for the public hearing. Thank you, Gail.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Have a nice holiday.
you too. Okay, we have the Grange project, historic preservation, 8,775. Cindy Wilson, I believe, is here. I don't know if anyone else is, but Cindy will just give us an overview of this project. Since the project was submitted, there's one change. I don't know if it changes the financial aspect of it, but we are fortunate that the family search people from the Mormon Church come in and they do digitization. And they have agreed to digitize a lot of the documents at the Grange, as well as today we worked on getting it ready for them to digitize all of the marriage, death, and birth data for Westport that we have. The advantage to using, first, it's free, is one thing, but they also provide an external hard drive with all the information on it. They keep it in the cloud forever, as they say, and then they make it so it's more searchable, because they're interested in connecting names with the data. So when we do this digitization to date, we just have flat digitized and no connections, but now we'll have connections of names, and that will be of great help to the town clerk, as she was saying today, because they're asked often for information about births, deaths, and marriages, and it goes back, way back. So, and also for cemetery certificates. So all of this is very helpful to them. Anyway, let's get to Cindy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for considering this project. I am the director of the food pantry, which is housed in the basement of the Grange, but I am now also the secretary of the Grange and have been helping them with this archival project. I'm part of a group, summer community, and I'm involved with the history house there, and have some experience in archiving documents and photographs and displaying them appropriately so that they don't deteriorate further, exposed to the elements. The Grange current collection is being housed in a closet off the kitchen, and there was some insect damage and some moisture damage that was happening to the documents. The framed images are hanging in the wall in the sunlight behind unprotected glass. So we are looking to purchase archival boxes and appropriate storage material to house the 70 or so books that we have that date back to 1890, that include the original handwritten minutes and financial documents of the Grange from 1890 to the current day. and then to reproduce and store the original images like the charter and several of the important documents that are framed and on display that have deteriorated because of their exposure to sunlight. So we would be using a professional service to make a digital version of that, have it cleaned up, reprint a better digital version, and display that behind archival glass, and then store the original in an archive safe space. And I spoke to the Westport Historical Society and to the Dartmouth Grange and to the UMass Dartmouth and some of the people that I've done archival stuff with in Pennsylvania to find out the best practices. And this was our proposal of what it would take to store it. It's not an excessively large amount. It takes up most of one closet, and it would be able to, once it's properly stored in the boxes, I would expect it would take up 1 to 2 shelf space. And we would keep digital copies and make them accessible through the Grange website and share that information with the community and other Granges.
That's great.
So Cindy, in this price, in this request, are you including any digitization of documents?
I do not think, I think we originally had put in there, and we put in purchasing a scanner of the documents before we knew that, and I don't have my glasses on. I didn't grab them with me when I came upstairs. I was late logging in because I didn't realize the meeting was tonight. So, but I had put in the purchase of digitizing using a face-up scanner, thinking that we would do it based on volunteers and that we could then possibly, if the CPC allowed us to purchase it, they could then utilize it for other organizations. If the Mormon group actually does that digitization, that could be backed out of that expense.
I wanted to say that, and I think it's included in your packet today, CPC members, that the CPC purchased the scanner. And the reason this is coming up so often now, this whole question, and that we can find volunteers who'll do the scanning. The question is having the equipment. So later on, I've asked that CPC approve us a purchasing scanner from administrative funds. Basically, that's about $400 to $500, but it would save us a lot of money. I think in the long run, save CPA funding a lot of money. So basically, I'd take out that 500 from this if you did that. So it'd be like 82.25 that they'd be asking for. Are there any questions? No questions. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move this to the meeting. What is it? The January meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Who is seconding, please?
Tim Caton.
Tim Caton seconding. Okay.
And John Bell made the motion.
Any discussion? So Tim Caton,
Tim Caton, aye.
John,
John Bell, aye.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim Gillespie,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah,
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark,
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Sydney.
Thank you very much.
In January, second Thursday in January, I believe.
Okay, I will put it on my calendar.
the 9th.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good night.
Okay, the next project, number 6, is the Westport Point United Methodist Church. Restoration, basically historic, it's under the historic preservation category of $450,000. So the committee has the information that I will be talking about. You've seen it already, but I'd like to just go over the issue that is with churches. In 2018, the Supreme Court of Massachusetts basically struck down a project for stained glass windows in a church. And they were stained glass windows which had religious symbols on them, basically. And since that time, there's been reluctance to bring projects for churches before CPCs around the state. However, I checked today and saw that since 2018, there have been 225 projects that have been approved by CPAs for church-related activities, and they are very diverse. And anyone who wants to can go to the Community Preservation Coalition, go to the database for projects, put in historic preservation for every town since 2018 and put church, and up they pop. So if you have any questions about that, you can look at that. So that's one thing. The second is that I asked Jim Hartnett if we could get a discussion or an opinion from the town council. And of course, it's a lawyerly result, basically saying you can always be sued. However, if you do a few things, it might help you if you were sued. So one of them was that you should have a grant agreement. And the answer is we always have grant agreements for private projects. So we definitely would have a grant agreement. The second is that the restoration should follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. And this has gone through the Historical Commission, and they do follow those standards. And we always look at them before the project is approved. So that has been required, has been done. The third is that the Historical Commission has met twice on this project. The first was to look at the entire project and make a decision on whether it should be given a certificate of appropriateness, and it was unanimously. Then the town council suggested that not only should they do that, but they should also make a different statement, which is actually part of the first one, but anyway, that the buildings concerned are significant. The Historical Commission made that determination unanimously that the buildings are significant for history, culture, archaeology of the town. And the Historical Commission has sent 2 letters to us, one telling about the certificate and the second about the significance, and recommending to us that we look favorably at this project. So given all that, I felt comfortable with bringing it before CPC. You remember last year that the St. John the Baptist came before CPC, but we had a strict letter from town council saying it was not a legal project. So we could not make that decision. Now they're saying this particular project looks like it could be legal. And it's up to, I spoke with Jim Hartnett, and he said that it's up to CPC to determine whether or not they want to go ahead with this project and put it before the town meeting. So given that background, and I think that covers most of things, unless somebody else can think of any other things, I'd like a presentation. I don't know who's going to be giving it.
I think Kit
Well,
Wise joined us, didn't he? I
See
think Kit's here.
Kit, we don't see you.
I saw that he had
Kit,
joined.
are you there?
And I'm here as well, Betty Buzz Brownlee.
Hi, Buzz. I saw you earlier, but I don't see Kit.
Betty, can I just point out that this is actually Howland Hall and not just the church? It's
Yes,
Howland
I know.
Hall.
It'll be clear once.
Okay.
I could give a quick summary if you like, Betty.
It's the property where we have to look at it as a property in the historic district, which is on the National Register, and the whole property is the church and the Howland Hall. The Howland Hall was built in 1967, so it's a newer building.
Yeah, Betty, I don't understand that. That's my issue with this is it was built in 1967. Like the church, yes, by all means historical, by all means. But just because it's connected to Howland Hall, how does that make it historical?
It isn't, age does not determine history, but anything, if you look at the, and I can send this to you, all the information in National Register, if anything is 50 years or older, it can be considered historic. But it's
I
not,
don't like that because I'm over 50.
pardon me?
I don't like that because I'm over 50.
You're very historic, John Bell. So it isn't a matter of age. It is a matter of
because I'm trying.
it's a
I'm
matter
really,
of how
I'm-
how the building has been used, how it's contributed to.
is this going to open the door now for other properties in town to come before us?
See, John, it also has to be on the historic inventory.
So the Howland Hall itself, not the church.
Yeah,
Howland Hall is on the National Register of Historic Places.
Right, the whole property. It's the
Okay.
whole property is on the National Register. I checked on that.
All right. I'll take that then for, okay.
It also, I mean, basically, it's on the Massachusetts State Register of Assets. And for CPC if you look at our website, our webpage on the town website, you'll see what determines whether something is historic. And one of them is that the local historical commission has determined that it is historic. That's it. But here it's clear that National Register, it's in the historic district, etc. So
Okay.
it is legally historic.
Okay. All right. You just put me at ease. Okay. Thank you.
Significant is another question. But anyway, Buzz, if you want to begin.
Certainly, thank you. And I appreciate everybody considering this application on behalf of the church. I act before you here. Just a quick summary here and start with saying that our application is based on a single estimate to date, and our larger church conference requires additional estimates, and we are actively pursuing additional, at least 2 additional estimates for this project. The hall is historic in a sense that's been discussed a little bit here because of its value to the community. And the church was built in '67. Since its onset, it has been used by the community. In fact, the plans, which I saw some time ago and dug out again, say that it's Howland Community Center. It's not the church's community center, it's Howland Community Center. And so in the application, you can see the long list of organizations and groups which have used this for a variety of activities, from dancing to quilting to bell ringing, and you name it. A couple of jumped out at me as being of interest, and that was 1970s. The town had a shortage of classroom space, And so the portions of the building, Howland Hall, were used for several grades of school. And in fact, I know two people who attended school at Howland Hall for a couple of years. And so that was back in the 1970s. Most recently, one of the more interesting uses we've had is the Westport Rowers have during the winter held practices in Howland Hall. They have rowing machines which very nicely fold into almost nothing, and were lined up against one wall of the hall and used by the rowers on a regular basis through the winter. And lastly, I think of this as a community center. You in the sense that you've seen the various activities that are broadcast well, such as the clam bakes over the years. Most recently, just last Saturday, we had one of our annual occurrences there in the hall with our Holly Fair for preparation of the coming holiday season. And that hall from 9 to 2 was really packed with people. And sure, they were there ostensibly to buy some greenery or some decorations for the holiday season. But on the other hand, what really struck me was the number of conversations going on. People would stop and say, well, I haven't seen you now, and I don't know how long, and they'd start a conversation. So it became, as many of these occasions in Howland Hall become a community activity, and people look forward to them. Yeah, I think in that respect, as well as for the more stated obvious reasons for the activity. So our goal in this project is to make Howland Hall better usable for the community. We want to rehabilitate the exterior. We want to improve accessibility. We want to improve energy efficiency. And it's going to be divided really into two phases. We're looking for funding for phase one, which would probably be the significant portion of it. We're looking to replace these cedar shingles, which are falling off the sides. Any kind of a blow that we have, you find all kinds of these shingles on pieces of them on the ground, and they're just falling off, literally. The windows are 1960s awning style. The frames and the sash, and many of them are just rotted, and a number of them inoperable. They're single pane with no storms, and they're a great heat gain and heat loss depending on the season, which makes the room less than comfortable, especially in the summertime, for people like the square dancers who just have limited the square dancing because the hall gets too hot in the summertime. We want to improve the accessibility. The entrance doors on the outside are old metal doors, which are rusting, but they don't meet ADA requirements by any means. The thresholds are too high, and so we're going to put in a modest addition to the building, hopefully, which will house a lift, and that will be an accessible entry. And in the second phase, in the next step, we would then install a lift to provide accessible routes within Howland Hall. At the present time, we have a lift which can get somebody from the first floor, from the middle area where the entrance is, to the second floor. But as somebody with a disability, you can't get from the second floor to the first floor within the building. And so the lift would solve that problem for us. Then on the interior, in addition to the lift, we want to improve the restroom situation, because we have 4 restrooms in the building, none of which is accessible to people with disabilities. So those are the things we want to undertake inside, along with some air conditioning so that we can get the hall better usable for people in the summertime. That's the gist of phase one. We've got some additional, line items that you can see. For instance, that modest addition to the building that's going to be for the lift, unfortunately, is going to sit right on top of our existing well. So we're going to have to move the well to a slightly different position. And so that'll be a cost that we didn't anticipate, certainly, initially. And on the inside in phase two, we need to improve the lighting and the sound and the decor, and like to put in a modest kitchen so that people who are coming for a gathering can fix some food if they wish. But that's in the second phase of this, and we're primarily addressing tonight the first phase. Kit, is there something you want to add?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
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 Yeah, I was on a previous computer which was having a bad connection, and I've got a different computer now that's working better for me. Thank you. We've broken this application for phase one work into really 6 different phases, but the 4 primary ones include much of what Buzz has described. The principal first one is the restoration of the exterior of the building with re-siding and new windows. The second part of it is the accessible entry, the new small addition that would include a stairway and a lift that would provide access to both the lower and upper levels of Howland Hall. It would also get rid of the very ugly concrete stair that presently provides entry to the top level of Howland Hall. The third part would be creating an accessible toilet room on the main floor of Howland Hall. And the fourth part, which has always seemed a little in favor of the church usage of the property, is creating ramps that will make it possible to get from the church sanctuary itself to Howland Hall by an accessible interior route. And we've separated that piece out in case the CPC might think that it was too, dare I say, too churchy to be included in the grant. But it isn't an integral part of the whole problem of creating accessibility into and throughout the building. And then the other 2 little parts are the other parts, which I think I've called D and E on my plans, are the air conditioning of Howland Hall itself to make it more usable in the summertime, and the relocation of the well. And we're hoping that the CPC will see its way to helping fund all of these parts of the project, but we've separated them out into individual parts so that the CPC might be able to pick and choose, if they want to, which parts of the project they might fund.
Buzz, you wanted to add?
Yes, if I could just add a word to Kit's mention of the ramps between the church and the hall. It might sound churchy on the face of it, but on the other hand, there are public events in the church. The acoustics are wonderful. And so we have things like concerts at the Point at the church. And we know that certainly some of the musicians often will warm up our practice before the performance in Howland Hall. And yet to get there, you have to go down some steep steps that look as if you're going into somebody's cellar. You have to duck your head and then get to the middle landing and then go up another set of steps to get to Howland Hall. And it's not just concerts at the Point. There are other concerts that we've had there, and we've had various things like funerals for people who are not at the members of the church, and yet they might want to have a reception in Howland Hall. So it's very difficult for a person with a mobility impairment. Thanks.
Deborah, could I ask you to say something about the appropriateness of the changes and what you think the impact will be, the external changes?
Sure. As you know, we don't have any call on what happens on the interior of the buildings, but we did a review of this proposal when Kit Wise came to the WHC in November at our meeting and presented the plans. So we looked at all of the exterior changes, also the accessibility and entrance sequence features that Kit pointed out to us. And we had a lot of discussion about, you know, the windows, the fenestration patterns, the significance of the building itself, the appropriateness of the design based on the existing historical district on the point and other buildings on the point. Does it fit in? Is it consistent? And all those kinds of things that were discussed. There was some discussion about one particular window where we felt there could be one more window along that fenestration to make it more uniform. Kit agreed to put that in to the final plan that was eventually approved by the WHC. There was a lot of discussion about how you see that building as you walk up the point, because the cemetery is right next to it. There's a lot of open space. So it's a very significant building on the point because you see it so clearly from many, many different perspectives as you walk up and down, you know, the point. So the design appeared to the Historic Commission to be very appropriate for the point, for the continuity of the buildings on the point. This would be a huge improvement to what's there now. Especially there was going to be, I think, some cladding along the basement wall. I think Kit could maybe describe that a little bit. That would really improve the exterior texture of the building. The windows certainly need to be improved. They are very dated and they don't fit with what the building is or with any other buildings on the point. So we thought it was a very good plan, and we got a lot of good discussion about it, and I think it was very well received by all the commissioners on the Westport Historical Commission. Garrett Stuck, the chair of the commission, wrote a letter. I'll point you to that at the end of the packet that was distributed to the members for tonight's meeting. There is a copy of that letter that Garrett wrote. It's short, but it's very succinct about and concise about what the elements are that we're trying to preserve. That he said, I'll just read this into the record. The building itself, while not particularly significant architecturally, is near the center of the Point Historic District and is highly visible due to its location next to the church and across the street from the cemetery. It's seen from quite a distance, and it's an important contributor to the character of the historic district. So as John Bell pointed out, it may not be what you think of as a historic building. It's very important to the Westport Point. It's been on it, and it's on the Register of Historic Places since 1991. So it meets the criteria. And then Howland Hall itself is cultural, and I'm quoting from Garrett's letter, is culturally significant because it's one of the only meeting spaces in South Westport, and it's within easy walking distance of the entire point, regularly used for lots of different activities as Buzz just talked about. If it's renovated, and this is the conclusion, if it's renovated and made more accessible and comfortable as proposed, its value as an architectural, cultural, and historical asset will be much enhanced, and we therefore approve the application for certificate of appropriateness and recommend it to the CPC.
Thank you. Tim Gillespie? Tim Gillespie? Tim?
There we go. Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. The number $450,000 is a big chunk, but I know that the one bid you've got, if you get a couple of more bids, I suspect that the big number is going to come down. At least I would hope that that would be the case. But anyways, we're going to require at least 2 more bids anyways. The CPC will, and I know Buzz mentioned that you're going to go after 2 more.
Yes.
Tim, they will have to do, well, we're hoping that could happen before January if we pass this on, but they will have to do an RFP at any rate for this kind of funding. So the question of the amount is a big question. And it seems to me, I mean, I have been working with them to some extent, and they understood that asking for this amount of money was probably a far reach. I encouraged it in order to look at the various components and to see what it is you think that would help make this building more useful and also more attractive in the historic district. So we don't have to approve every part of this. We can pick and choose. We could do that either at this meeting or the next meeting. But there are things that seem to be very common around the state, and I'd really like for some of you to look at the different projects, if possible, the Community Preservation Coalition website. One of them is accessibility. Accessibility is such a key aim of the state, one thing, and an aim of restoration is to also make it accessible. And the accessibility part of this is very expensive. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, how much was it? Just the accessibility?
207.
207,000 itself. And I'm not clear what Kit said about how, if this is separating out, what is this separating out as far as accessibility is concerned? Is this just to get people to the second floor?
Yes, there are really 2 parts to the accessibility. With the one part, the principal part, which I think I've called Part B in the application, is the small addition that will include a new stairway from grade up to the top floor of Howland Hall, and the lift, which will provide access to both the upper level of Howland Hall and the lower level of Howland Hall. That's the principal accessibility for Howland Hall itself. The second part of accessibility for the whole building is the revision of the main stairway and the link and the ramps that will allow full accessibility between the church itself and Howland Hall. To speak for a moment to Tim's comment about the additional estimates bringing the price down, I think he knows as well as I do that preliminary estimates based on schematic drawings, which is all that these are never high enough. So if we did a complete set of construction documents for this building and put it out to bid, which is a very large project to do from an architect's point of view, we'd get a variety of bids, probably none of which would be below the estimates that we've provided at this point, because these estimates are based really on only schematic drawings and some very limited specifications. And as far as getting additional estimates between now and January, we can try to find somebody who can do it on the basis of the limited drawings that we have. But to get accurate estimates, it is an enormous amount of work in preparing drawings and specifications, which we haven't had the time to do up to this point.
So, John,
I'm just wondering if this project gets moved, if we can get a walkthrough down there before the next meeting.
Certainly.
yes or no?
Yes, yes, from the church.
Yes, okay. Yes, you can. Mark,
Yeah, Betty, thank you.
Tim, I'll get back to you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
That's okay. So, couple of observations. One is that the plans and the schematic design as presented seem to satisfy the needs, the programmatic needs of the church. And two, as to the costs, I would agree with Kit that you have to be cautious that the numbers you're seeing at this stage of the game can very likely be optimistic. And so if you, Betty, and the rest of the committee feels that that for all the reasons you outlined qualifies for CPC funding, I don't see any problem with the stated request of $450,000, given that a chunk of that will go toward the exterior restoration and preservation, and it'll cover a portion of the accessibility, although not the all of the accessible elements that are included. So it seems to me, if indeed you say that this project would qualify, that this level of funding is not unreasonable.
Tim, Caton?
Yes, Betty, when they do an estimate based on these preliminary drawings, they do it on like a square footage. A general contractor will come in and do whatever it is, so much a square foot. But then afterwards, when the architect fine tunes it and starts putting everything in pages of whatever subcontractors and whatever everybody else is responsible, you might get into a fire alarm issue because it's got to be brought up to code. So what I'm getting at is that price could go much higher. But my question is, and I'm new on the board, so it might sound foolish, but if the CDC gives $450,000 and this project turns into $850 or $9 or whatever, that's just what they're going to get from the CDC. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the next question I have, which is probably none of my business, the terms of like any public events there, whether it's a band or whoever the case may be, it was a funeral service or something for somebody to use the hall. Does the church get paid for that? Those services?
Buzz?
Yes, the church has a very modest fee, which essentially just covers the heat and the cleaning, if you will, for various events like that. Yeah.
So there's not much budgeting for extra stuff, maintenance and that kind of stuff for the church?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I am concerned about the total of 450,000 being given to town meeting in 1 year. What I've been thinking of is this being maybe a 2-year project, so that you do certain parts of it this year, and then certain parts next year. We can't guarantee that, but we have in the past done 2-year projects. Isn't that true, Tim? Gillespie, we've said,
Yeah.
yeah, we've done that. The reasons I now say that is that, one, I think the question of history is, I mean, what John immediately said, is this building really historical? So we have to consider historic. We have to sell that, is one thing. And secondly, it's a church. Last year we were unable to do St. John the Baptist. This year I've been trying to get them to come in, and they haven't. They finally wrote and said we can't come in this year. So I was worried about kind of people's attitudes. Well, we are now having this church and not the other one, and at such a large amount, because I know that the St. John the Baptist was asking for large amounts too, but both internal and external. So I have talked to a couple of people at the point about getting some other kind of help that would possibly reduce the cost of this. I mean, not reduce the cost of this to the church, besides the fact that they have to raise the money. For example, help in kind. I talked about a value estimator. I spoke with Deborah Cholfie about that, because one of the questions is, can you reduce some of the costs by not doing some of the things that you plan to do? And the only thing I could see in that was moving the bathrooms and the kitchen to the other side. Will that reduce the price significantly? And I understand that can be estimated, what the cost of doing that. So I think maybe we should think of this as a 2-year project. And in the meantime, look at what your other sources can be, and let people understand why this is it's an historic district. It's on the National Register. It serves a very important community role. All of these things, it's been really quite supported by the Historical Commission. So all of those things makes it a good project, but 450 is a lot. Deborah.
Just one thing. I think what you were referring to was value engineering, where you look at program and just change program and try to reduce scope to get some savings. And that's something that Kit would have to run that process with the estimators, but that's very detailed, and that's not going to be available by January for sure. That's just going to be a really, tough row to hoe to get it to by January. But one thought I had was, since we have the CPC has a mandate to do historic, either acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, restoration. That seems to be within the CPC's purview, right? So if we restricted our piece to just the things that are covered under that, so say the exterior renovation or exterior restoration, certainly accessibility is something that I think you said the CPC does care about, so we could restrict to those, the rehabilitation. So if we just did those two pieces, the exterior and the the ADA stuff, then we can, make that case. The optics are probably better over that 2-year period to fund just those things, and the other things, they have to be that money has to be raised elsewhere, not through CPC. So it's almost like a matching kind of grant, isn't it? We're saying we'll put this much up, but other sources of funding would be required to do the things that are not in our purview. Is that the way to frame this?
Well, for rehabilitation, you also have the question of accessible bathroom. I mean, if they're going to do restoration and spend this money. Kid, you can tell me if this is true or not. I think, aren't you required in a public space like this to have accessible bathroom?
You know,
For code.
I can't answer that directly.
Yeah.
But generally, yes.
Yeah, so it would be, you're talking about 234 and one, what are the first two? 132 and 234.
Well, actually, three things,
No,
132,
no, part-
207, and
part-
234, and 84. It's really everything except the AC and the well.
Oh, no.
It's still quite high, but over
Still
2
quite
years,
high.
over 2 years, you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that Tim Gillespie had it. I don't know who was
Yeah.
first, but Tim.
I've had it up for a while. The tricky thing about dividing a project like this into phases is usually that means it's going to ultimately cost more in the long run. It's going to cost more, not less. And it's really tough to start attacking a building like this and start the work that you want to do to make all these improvements and additions without having a dramatic impact on the interior of the building and making the building pretty much non-functional for a while. So it really makes more sense to throw yourself at a phase so that you can get through it and the building is fully functional at the end of that process.
That's right.
And dividing it up is really hard to do.
Yeah. Mark.
Well, I was going to suggest something, but I think Tim has a point. But I was going to suggest, and I would defer, of course, to the church and their wisdom about this. But if following the application, if they did under phase one, if they did part A, which is the exterior restoration, essentially, and part B, which is the accessible portions, and added the bathrooms, part D, I guess, second floor bathrooms. If you did those pieces, you'd have, following the estimates we have, $423,000. Now, whether that makes sense, and it would mean that you have to come back to do the internal ramps and stairway in the link, I guess, and in part of the church. If that's, if that makes no sense because of a double disruption to the church's activities, etc., I can understand that. But that is one way. If you people were reluctant to fund the entire as requested, so you could do the pieces I just said: exterior restoration and the accessible entryway and lift, and the accessible bathrooms on the second floor, all for the Howland Hall portion. That is probably a budget of, it's 423,000. Let's round it to 500,000. And if the CPC wanted to fund half of that for 250 or something like that in the first year, I'm just offering this as a sort of a compromise route.
Can I? Yeah, you're very close, Mark. And in fact, it's the part C, the stairways and the ramps that link the church to the Howland Hall, that could be left out at this point. But part A and part B, as Tim pointed out, would almost have to be done together because they're integral to the exterior skin of the building. And if you did those two pieces, and you included the restrooms on the main level, I think the estimate of $84,000 for that is extraordinarily high. And in fact, the way we had it estimated indicates to me that it is high. You would have to move the well, and as Betty has, and maybe the air conditioning could go to a second round of funding, but parts A and B, A, B, and D really would go hand in hand. And if the committee could contribute $250,000 to that, and the church already has $50,000, I imagine if we got that going, the church might well be able to raise the additional to complete that part of the project. And then that would leave really only the connection of the stairway and the ramps of Part C to be done in a second application for next year. And that could be done as a separate project.
So Kit, you're saying A, which is 132, and B, which is 207.
Yes.
And F.
And 84.
And F, the
So
well.
that's,
You can't do the bathrooms without the well.
That's right.
so that's almost 450. And so you're saying 250, 250?
Well, so 450. So if that comes to 450, and the CPC provides 250, and the church has 50, the church does need to raise another $150,000
For
to
phase
complete
one.
that.
Yeah, for
Complete
phase one.
that phase one.
Laura?
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Oliveira. I'm from the Point Church. The other part is we have left as a fundraising goal the interior components of Highland Hall, which are not in front of you. And that is, renovating the hall, as Betty mentioned, a small catering kitchen, some AV, possibly the AC. So that was the piece that the church had intended to do a fundraising campaign for, and that's why it wasn't included with this phase one.
Buzz?
Yes, and it's been touched on. I did want to point out that if that the well is foremost, that's probably the first thing that's going to have to be done. If in fact we undertake A and B and D.
Oh, okay. Laura, do you have another question? Another blank? So, between now and January, I know that it's almost January now. Is there any chance of talking to some people in the neighborhood and around the town about doing some in-kind work? I mean, or people who could supply some of the materials at cost, things of that nature. I mean, I've already approached one person who is willing to help, but we got to know that you're going to be able to raise these funds.
Yeah.
And we need some before we would. We don't always do that, but with the Historical Society, basically, we assume they raise the funds and they raise them. It's easier for them, of course. But do you think you could raise the funds? You think you could get in-kind help? Does that work, Kit? I mean, I'm not thinking of people to come in and volunteer labor. I'm talking about somebody who dig the well for a reduced price, or somebody who supplies materials at a reduced price. Is it the materials that cost so much or the labor?
Both.
I know both, but if you had some contributions, would it make a significant difference? Kit?
I have, the one thing that comes to mind immediately would be the windows, which are a big portion. And I
Right.
have done work with Pella Windows on other nonprofit projects where they have given significant discounts on their prices. So that's one source. Could you get the local well drillers to give an advantageous price? I don't know. I think that's a job that the church would have to go after. Would local contractors be willing to help out with something, Mr. Gillespie?
I'm retired.
You're retired, yeah.
Levin's too busy.
Yeah, I know.
So
it is something the church is going to have to pursue. There's no question.
okay, so definitely we're talking about part A, which 132 or so. The question of the bathroom, do you have to have 2 bathrooms? Or can you deal with one, and can you leave it where it is?
Well, let me try to explain what happened on that. In the original estimates we got from Valois, we were going to do 2 accessible toilet rooms in the basement of Howland Hall. And the estimate that they gave us was based on that, and that involved a lot of jackhammering up concrete slabs and putting in new drains and so forth and so forth and so on. And at the very last minute, we changed that to creating one accessible unisex handicap toilet on the main floor of Howland Hall. And I just jiggered Valois's original estimate for the 2 basements and the 2 bathrooms in the basement to one handicapped accessible bathroom and another non-accessible bathroom on the second floor, and just threw a number at it, quite honestly, and that's where the $84,000 came from. And I'm pretty sure that number is awfully high.
Okay.
So it's a matter of the time we had to put these estimates together.
So we're talking about 132, 207, and 84, which is 323.
And 15.
Well, yeah. Okay.
If you use these numbers, those are the 4 categories: A, B, D, and F.
Yes,
Those
that's
4
right.
categories, and then the other ones are the stairs and the AC, which is 234 plus 35, so it's about 270. So you got 270 on one side, and then you got all the rest on phase 1. And I guess my question, Betty, not to jump the line here, but is this so that we can do a grant? We have to have confidence that the delta, the difference between what is needed and what CPC could fund, that there's a level of confidence that it can be raised or brought in kind before we could consider it? Or is that just something we have to just trust might happen?
They have 50,000 in hand right now, but it's a question of if they were to do the outside, that's independent. I mean, in the sense, nothing else. If they were to do the lift, and I really believe there's a possibility of finding a lift, a used lift, which the Stafford School has done. They're veterans, but there are lifts all over Boston that are being taken out. And they're in good condition to be put in, something like that. There are these things that can be done, but there's going to have to be a real strong move to do that.
Yep.
And I am going to ask Susan Montgomery, who is here. She's chair of the Neighborhood Association. I just like her opinion because she usually has an opinion. And you need to open we can't hear you, Susan. What do you think about the importance of this and the fundraising possibilities, et cetera?
I will say two things, but I'll tell you ahead of time. I don't know enough about the church process or the church itself to comment on their fundraising capacity. The two things I will say are when I first moved into this community, and I'm not a member of the church and I never have been. When I first moved into this community 53 years ago, I met the community in Howland Hall.
Yes.
And the events I attended were community events. That's how I got to know many people, and the church drew me into various activities. It was a quilt making group that operated in Howland Hall for more than 20 years. That was not only church members. And it's very much, to me, Howland Hall is a community building. It is the only place in the area where you can meet. It is used by organizations that other than the church and that are not affiliated with the church. And that's been my experience personally over a long period of time. So I think that is true. And I think people can talk to that, and you can get, and there'll be people from other parts of town who have had at least some of that experience.
Oh, yes.
The other thing I would say, however, and I'm not sure where you're heading on what you're going to ask for a motion, Betty, so you're stuck with what I say here. I think it's premature. I think you need tighter numbers and push some numbers down before you go public. And although clearly the building needs some work done, so I feel bad saying that, I fear that if you go and you ask and you get turned down, you will have lost your shot. And it would be better to do some of the things Betty's suggested, which is, I don't know, maybe there's not time for value engineering, but, you know, finding about in kind, taking a second look. Is it possible to do this without drilling a new well? Can the addition be located in a different place on the south wall? But this conversation and listening to you and hearing people thinking out loud about this, if you do that in a public meeting, you've lost us. So you know, my heart is with you, and I want to see it happen. And I wasn't going to say anything, but Betty asked, so I'm telling you what I think.
So what about the fundraising?
Betty, you know, I'm not a member of the church.
Well, I know.
I think you know, you can speak to this as well as I can. I mean, I think clearly there's a great case to be made. We know that as opposed to 53 years ago when I moved here, there's more private wealth on the point than there used to be. And if people have to be brought along. The kitchen hasn't worked for a long time, hasn't been there. A lot of the events that used to happen weekly haven't been happening, so they have to understand how this is going to revive that. And I'm not a professional fundraiser, and I'm not a member of the church. I do know from my years of attending things at the church, I do know in the past there have been families who at various, and Buzz knows better, at various times have provided significant support.
But Susan, over the years, have you not worked on the stained glass windows and other things of the church as volunteer?
Oh, yes, but I wasn't raising the funds.
No, but you were volunteering. My question, you know, I'm just wondering if there's that kind of volunteer information. Anyway, thank you very much. I've got a lot of other questions out there. Tim, I think you were next. Gillespie.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I think it would be good to move this thing to the public hearing, and I think that in my mind, I think 250 might be putting too much pressure on the church for fundraising. I would push it more like 300 that we would provide and give them a little less that they would have to raise. Because it would be a struggle. I know that this fundraising is one of the more painful processes that one can go through. And some people are really good at it and really successful at it. But Westport Point is populated by a lot of people that are clever, that and also have money. And I know that Boy Scout troops have gone through that building for decades. My son included, both of my sons. So the church has spread a fairly broad net across this town in the services that it has provided to the town. And I think a public outreach could be successful if it's done well.
Okay.
People like Gay Gillespie, who's been involved in a lot of fundraising with the Watershed Alliance. I mean, there are people that are really good at this stuff.
Yeah.
And if you engage them, I think you could easily get the rest of that money. But I'd like to reduce the burden on the church a little bit.
Tim Caton? Tim Caton?
Yeah, I think Tim Gillespie, I think he's really onto something, and I kind of agree with his statement. But you know, not to pour any salt in the wound either, but has the town, has anybody found out from the town, does the septic system have to be upgraded when you start moving around bathrooms and things such as that? That's another question I would have.
Have you looked at that, Kit?
There would not be any impact on the septic system. We have the same number of toilet rooms. I mean, if Howland Hall got more heavily used, there might be more flow to it, but I can't really answer that question. It's not like
What kind of system is there now?
Buzz would have to answer that.
If you do a certain valuation, a certain amount of change, doesn't that cause a need to upgrade septic system? That's a question you all need to look at.
If you put a bedroom in, you'd be in trouble, but they're not putting a bedroom in.
That's something you should look at. I think that Mark had his hand. I'll get back to you, Buzz. Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Betty. I don't think we should spend any more time trying to figure out how to fundraise. I mean, that's not the reason. That's not the purpose of this committee. I think what we should decide is what scope of work we're comfortable accepting a proposal for, and how much we want to allocate to that. And right now, it sort of sounds like just if we accept as the scope of work parts A, B, D, which is the bathrooms, and F, which is the well, there's a total of $450,000. And I think I'm hearing that the committee might be amenable to funding 300,000 of that. Is that a fair summary?
Deborah is a member.
I have a suggestion along the lines that Mark is saying. If the ask is around 450 and you think the optics are a little bit difficult to get the town to rally around such a big number, what if we did something like 300 outright and 150 matching? That would help them get to the next level of what they really need to do the whole project. Because we know if you just do it partially, it's not going to really accomplish what they're trying to do to recreate Howland Hall as a functional space. So why not do an outright grant for an amount that people feel comfortable, like 300, and then the other 150 is out there with some community support as a matching. So then they have more than 450 to get to the number they need to do the whole project. And they've already reached 50, they already have 50 in hand toward that match.
Yeah, Buzz?
Yes, well, you touched on a good point there. I have to remind folks that this is phase one of a two-phase project, and just doing phase one isn't going to fully accomplish the goals of making Howland Hall a really pleasant, climate-controlled space with good sound. The place is so so reverberant now that 10 people in there talking at once, you can't hear anybody. It makes the back eddy look pale in that respect. So there's lots more to be done, which we, knew from the outset was going to be on the horizon, where we just split it into two phases. So I'm not a professional fundraiser either, but I am concerned about the ability of this small church congregation to be able to pull off a significant chunk of phase one plus phase two.
So what I was saying earlier is a 2-year project. And I think that what Deborah's saying, maybe the first year should be 300,000, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But at least you can get the part that's most important is the historical commission saying it is a historic, it will help in historic preservation and rehabilitation. John Bell?
Hey, do we need a number to move it to the next meeting?
We could move the 450, but suggest that it be less. I mean, that they try to come down to 300. We could do that. We could do what we want. Dale hasn't said anything. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Dale.
I guess I just, I keep feeling like there's more information that we need in order to, I feel like, yes, it should be moved to the next meeting for sure. I'm not so sure about making necessarily a recommendation on it though yet, because it sounds to me like there is more information that we need in order to make any kind of proposal at the next meeting, or say what it is we are going to recommend as our share, what we're willing to pony up with. So I don't know. I feel a little uncomfortable with it, because it feels kind of, there isn't necessarily definite information here. There's a lot of supposition and a lot of, we hope it would be less money, or maybe we don't need to do this part, or what will the effect be on the septic system? Is there any? That just feels to me like a lot of questions.
Yeah, Phil didn't come, unfortunately.
Maybe I'm the only person that feels that way. I don't know, but
Well, yeah, that's an interesting, it's an important question though. Tim Gillespie?
I'd like to make a motion that we move this to our public hearing and move it with the number that's attached to the thing. And in the meantime, we can try to educate ourselves. We can pick Kit's brain and maybe arrive at a more reasonable number, and talk to Buzz and the congregation and see what they think is realistic. And by the time we recommend something at town meeting, maybe we'll all feel well informed and be able to support this project at the level that makes sense.
Yes.
So I'm moving it for the 450 to the
You're
public.
moving the project as is, but are requesting that we need further information, particularly on how likely the church is able to raise the other funds. Is there any reduction in funds that may happen? What's about the septic system? These are things you have to think about. Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I second. Deborah Chialfi seconds.
Is there any discussion about the motion?
Yes, Betty, so to be clear, although we're acting on this motion for the 450,000, we're not, I guess what you're saying, Tim, is we're not committing it to that at this point. We're going to wait for the public hearing.
Correct.
And make a final decision at that point. So if that's the understanding, then I'm ready to move ahead on the vote.
Any other comments? Anybody from outside?
One other thing I want to mention, Betty, is that there was talk earlier about there's other interior renovations that also need to be made as part of this total project. And I don't think anyone has floated a number at all about what that total is going to look like. And I think that's one of the, what percentage of the total project are we even funding? And that may help the optics of this, that, CPC is not funding 100% of this. There's a lot of other things that will be done And what did it mean? Do we even know what that pie in the sky number is? Do we know at all?
Yes. Kit Wise?
Yes, we do know what the number is because Belois provided an estimate for what we're calling here Phase 1 and Phase 2, which is the complete renovation of Howland Hall, a whole new kitchen, and 2 new accessible bathrooms and so forth, and acoustical treatment and better decor and better lighting and HVAC. And the total number for Phase 1 and Phase 2 came to about $950,000.
Okay.
Yep.
That's helpful.
But
Laura?
Deborah, I think it's important to note that the church trustees are already looking at reducing the scope of Phase 2. It include moving some plumbing, and we're just looking at getting the cost of that phase as low as possible. But I think
Understood. But just so we can have a sense of like what is CPC signing up for as a percentage of the total project. I just think it's useful to see what our role is vis-a-vis the whole project.
Absolutely. Thank you.
See, the reason we're having this long discussion is because it's a church. And it's better we have this discussion now and try to figure it out, because there is one time in the past years ago, and Tim Gillespie may remember this, when there was a project to paint the outside of the meeting house. 2 people came and opposed it and said, this is a church. Why are we giving public funding to the church? And the result of the meeting was 2 people voted against it. I mean, it didn't carry a lot of weight, but this may come up. And so we should be as fully prepared and confident in this project, more than probably any other, because we're going to have to go through it again, probably with St. John the Baptist. But there's this, because they have a clearly historic building, the first town hall, which we would like to preserve, at least the exterior. So I would really advise, I know it's Christmas time and everything, but I would advise the church, if possible, to look into some of these questions. I can ask Phil Weinberg, who's on CPC, but who didn't come. I can ask him about the septic. I'll do that for you. And I also will communicate with another person who I've already communicated with, who's offered, I believe, substantial help. And let's see how that goes. But it will be something where the rest of the community, not just the Point, should have interest in this, because the church itself has been made up of people from all over. Laura doesn't live at the Point. Buzz lives over at Mascasatch, and Kid is now at the Point. But I think we need other people to weigh in on it also. Mark? Can't hear you, Mark.
As long as we focus on exterior restoration and accessibility, I think the CPC is on pretty solid ground. We could sell it to the town on that basis. Any other issues that the church wants to undertake, that's their prerogative. They can do that. But I think we're in good grounds to move or to approve any monies that will go toward those 2 purposes. And with that, I think we should move the question.
Okay, we have a motion before us for this project as is to go to town hall, to the public hearing. God. So I'm calling for a vote. Tim Clayton.
Tim Caton, aye.
John.
John Bell, aye.
Dale.
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim Gillespie.
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah.
Deborah Chialti, aye.
Mark.
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. That's unanimous. This will go to the public hearing January 9th. Okay. Thank you very much. The next project, sorry to keep you guys so long, but the Recreation Committee, I believe Tim Gillespie, are you going to be presenting?
Yes.
All right.
This is the focusing on Bicentennial Park out off of Gifford Road near the Macomber School. We are already in the process of replacing the playground that is there. We're negotiating with 3 different playground companies trying to get a design that we like. We pretty much have the money already in place for that project. But what we see is that whole area, the playground area, is part of a bigger open space. There are 2 basketball courts there. There is a skate park in the back, and things are getting a little ratty around that. And we see that there could be improvements over time. And what this particular application is focusing on is just a number of fairly straightforward things. We want to remove the skate park. It's in fairly terrible shape. We'd like to prep that area for some future recreational use, which could be a new skate park. We want to engage the community in some public meetings and workshops to try and identify what the town would like to see there. It could be pickleball, could be skate park, it could be bocce ball, it could be simply an open space with a pavilion that people could picnic in, something like that. Speaking of pavilions, a pavilion is another thing we're thinking about. I would like to design a wood frame, timber frame pavilion, and it could either be a community project where members of the community help build it, or we could put it out to bid and get some contractors to build it. The pathways that get people in and out of it are in terrible shape. We want to pave them. We want to make it easily accessible for handicap. So we're going to improve the pathways around the area. We're going to improve the basketball courts, which may involve repaving them and putting in new facilities in terms of basketball hoops and all that stuff. The fence along Gifford Road is terrible. We want to replace that fence, and we want to improve the parking. One of the concepts we thought about is maybe removing one of the basketball courts and expanding the parking into that area. But anyways, that is sort of the scope of what we're thinking about. And we've got bigger plans for down the road, but we're going to engage the community in trying to figure out what it is we exactly would like to do. We are asking for $250,000 for this particular project. We've assigned numbers to these specific phases. These numbers may be high. I think they probably are high, but we're trying to go worst case. So we're asking for $250,000 for these improvements and adjustments to Bicentennial Park.
So Tim, the other funding you have are in the future sometime.
Yeah,
You're asking for other funding in the future. You're not.
we will eventually, yes.
Yeah. You're not asking for that
But,
now.
you know, we don't have that locked in yet. Some things cost more than other things.
Right. And you will see what the public wants. What about safety there?
About what?
Safety, I mean, in the sense that I remember we did allocate some funds up there and there was a lot of damage done. Is it better now than it used to be? Do you remember?
I really don't have enough information to give you a solid answer on that. I know that there have been people concerned that the skate park was attracting kids from out of town that would do drugs and smoke and drink in that area. I think less of that's going on now. If we remove the skate park and turn it into a more attractive area, I think it's going to get more use and it'll be less likely to attract that kind of use. But I think I haven't heard a lot of complaints lately about that kind of stuff.
John's a policeman. What do you say, John? John Bell?
Well, most of the complaints were from the skate park, but now it seems the kids have moved on to a nicer skate park in Tiverton. So we really don't see the issues like we used to over there. My question to Tim, Tim, what is the maintenance program? I know we got a new playground at the town hall annex. So do you guys have a maintenance program to?
Well, one of the benefits of these new playgrounds is that they're far less maintenance. With the old playgrounds, we had wood chips that were the base for the whole thing, and they had to be replaced and rejuvenated every couple of years, which is expensive. These new playgrounds have a rubber surface that does not need that kind of maintenance. So they go, and then the components of them are built in such a way that they last longer. The old annex playground was pressure treated lumber and it deteriorated. The playground at the Bicentennial Park right now has elements that are rusted and delaminating and things. And we think that the way they're building them these days, they have more longevity in terms of how they last. But we do have to get more proactive in checking the playgrounds out and maintaining them. And I think the way the Recreation Commission is currently formed and with a director that we have, we're going to be more able to do that. Years past, we didn't really have a functional Recreation Commission. We have a very functional one now. Sorry?
Who's going to cut the grass? Is it still the?
Well, the highway department used to cut the grass. And maybe we can get them to do it again. They've been cutting it once in a while. But if we can't get the town to do it, which I think they really should do, we may have to figure out a way to hire somebody to cut the grass out there. It really deserves it because it's a valuable asset. These recreational areas are few and far between, and these ones are going to end up being really attractive. And so we need to maintain them and take good care of them. So I think it's incumbent on recreation and the town to make sure that maintenance happens.
Yeah, with the skate park, the kids used to take the fence apart just so they could, I don't know what their term they used, but grinding on the fences and stuff.
Yes.
And that's what wrecked a lot of the old playground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will you have security cameras?
Not a bad idea. We haven't
Not
thought
very
of that.
expensive, actually.
No, they're not.
You might want to. So one of the things is we've given you $700,000 already, and this is $250,000. We're $1 million into recreation.
And we're very grateful.
I think recreation is extremely popular. And I guess one of the arguments is for years and years and years, there was nothing done. And
Right.
all of a sudden, with the new director who is doing it, and if you have a maintenance program and security cameras, it kind of makes it, I think people will like it. We have to think of what people at their town meeting think. Anything else? Any other questions? Anybody?
Nope.
Okay, may I have a motion, please, from other than Tim Gillespie?
Yeah, John Bell, I make a motion, we move it to the January meeting for the $250,000.
Okay, is there a second?
Dale Weber, second.
Dale Weber, second. Is there are there any other comments? Okay, so Tim Caton,
Tim Caton, aye.
John,
John Bell.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim Gillespie,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah,
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark.
Schmidt, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. That's unanimous. It goes to the public hearing. So Maria will advertise before the next public hearing and put these two projects in. It's not on the agenda, but it's within the 48 hours, we suddenly got a completely new project, which I believe Tim will speak to, and I believe there are a couple of others here who've been waiting for hours to.
I think Jim Potter is here.
Ken Sullivan, I don't know if Jimmy Potter is here.
He was.
Yeah, he's here. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, but he's for first time in a long time. All our projects came, and you all came very late. So who's going to present and explain to us what's going on? Here is the project in front of you, everybody.
Well, I can start off, Betty.
Okay, Ken.
So we, myself and Jim Potter started working on a grant this summer with the company Jim works for, where they give out big money, significant money for projects like ours. And baseball obviously has benefited from CPC in the past years with the 2 new fields and then 2 new fields for softball. So with this grant that Jim had uncovered, we started applying in August and heard back from the company in the end of September that they would like to see some type of confirmed match. And right away, I didn't think of CPC, so Jim and I kind of went back and forth. And then, you know, kind of my fault. I'll take the heat on this one. All of a sudden, it was December 11th. And it occurred to me that CPC discusses this stuff in December. And I said, well, we've taken a lot from CPC. It can't hurt to ask because it's a match situation. And I know that CPC likes match situations. So I said, Jim, let's just give it a shot. He put together the concept plan this week, and we've got it submitted. So that's kind of where we stand right now. The senior league field will benefit all the older age kids who have aged out of the traditional little leagues. And, you know, we're using space that Rad Sports had already leveled for us. We're much further into the project than having to clear new land all of a sudden. So it won't be the full bite like we experienced with the old fields as far as the cost goes.
So everybody, this is Ken Sullivan. You're still president of the
Sadly, yes.
IAA volunteer, and CPA funds have been used very popular with the town to develop the playing fields on Route 177. And if anybody wants to go and look at them, I'm sure Ken would be glad to show you around.
Absolutely.
So this is the whole process has been very expensive in 22 years.
Just about that, yeah.
From one volunteer group to another volunteer as their kids all grew up. So now we have Jimmy Potter who's grown up. So they're asking for 150,000. They have 100,000 grant, and they're asking for 150,000, which they believe will cover everything. That's correct, isn't it, Ken? Because you came back for electricity and water and irrigation and dugouts. Will this cover the 250,000 total?
Jim, you want to speak to that?
Yes.
Jim Potter?
No, not a problem. So I'm Jim Potter. Again, I'm with the Westport Babe Ruth League, but also the rep for the WIA as well. Yes, the 250,000. 250,000. Let me break this down a little bit better. So, like Ken mentioned before, my company has a My Support, My Cause type large grant funding. It goes up to 100,000. We requested that during the summertime. That's something that we've been working on to match for this. As far as an estimate, as you can see, the concept plan that's on there now, there is no clearing. We walked through and did a conceptual estimate based on this. The biggest thing for us is that the grass field is already there. We actually have our corporation, which is Keith McDonald, already on board, that just also provided to us a proposal to do the engineering services. So we've already kind of working hand in hand with them in order to get this in. Where the cost really lies is how it's going to be oriented and tied into the existing grading. It's basically, a flat surface right now that's there. And how far out into the outfield we actually need to grade out into. We believe right now that once we can do the survey in the springtime, that the cost really depends on how far out we really need to go to take into the field. It's a pretty level area. I just want to make sure that it drains properly. I think the cost is also down in the sense of the other fields were all clay. We're proposing a blue stone dust field along with very simple, chain link fence and backstop. We're not doing fencing all the way around the outside in order to maintain the space that's out in the outfield for other sports during the fall. Right now they have flag football. There's other areas that usage out there, similar to like we're doing at what we have at the old high school right now. And we're confident that cost will cover this whole thing. Yes.
You're not having dugouts?
So dugouts are going to be very simple. It's going to be enclosed concrete pad, metal benches. We're not doing anything that's special outside of what's already there at what you're seeing right now at the existing WIA field. So
and irrigation, electricity.
Already there.
Already there.
It's all clear. Okay. Tim Gillespie?
Yeah, I talked to Jim about this. He called me and he told me that what they were going to ask was 100 to 120,000, and I encouraged him to put a contingency on it. That's why it's 150.
Appreciate that, Tim.
Mark?
I'm sorry.
Mark,
oh,
we can't hear you.
I
Mark.
heard Mr. Sullivan say at the beginning that there was a $100,000 grant, and they like applications which are a match. Suppose we match that for 100.
It's a good question. As Jim was saying, we'll know a little bit more once we get into the survey, how far they have to go out with the field. As Tim mentioned, there is a little play in our numbers, so it's possible. Yes.
Well, no, I mean, you'd have to go out. We would give you 100, you get a grant for 100, and whatever additional funds you would be responsible for. But,
right.
We have funded this extensively, and I don't know what senior means, whether there are shorter base, is it a shorter run to first
If
base?
I could jump in and say something here, the senior league fields, it is kind of smacks of when we were trying to get the fields done because the new middle high school was being built, and those fields weren't going to be used any longer. And this kind of ties into what's going on with the high school, because if we ever come to a decision in this town to sell the high school and sell the property off, then the major league fields are gone, and then the older kids won't have anywhere to play. They're kind of hanging on to the high school property now, and if that goes away, then there will be nowhere for them to play.
Yeah, no, I was just being facetious about that.
Right.
Whether the field was smaller or something for seniors.
It's a bigger field. Yeah.
But I still think the best way to sell this is if you announce that you have a grant for 100 and you're looking for a match for an identical amount. That I think that would probably go over in town meeting a little better. But that's just my opinion.
Jim?
Understood.
Jim Potter?
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted to just kind of elaborate on that as well. So being part of the baseball board that is running it, so there is concern, and we've been following what's been going on with the existing fields at the old high school. And yes, we the town built the Westport Middle High School with one senior league field, which means, 90-foot base paths, 60-foot mound. It's anyone for kids who are 13 plus. So it's basically like a major league size field. But that Westport Middle School High School only has one of them, but they have 3 teams that play there as well. So you have the middle school, the JV, and the varsity team. Those teams right now, there's 2 teams, varsity, the JV and the middle school, that actually go over to the old high school and play there. If the town sells that, now we're squeezed down to the one field, and this at least allows, and then for instructional for us, for the WIA, now we're squeezed down even further because we don't have a field for any kids who are 13 plus to be able to actually practice on, and then we're going to have to be fighting for time on those fields. So we're looking at this as really kind of, pre-planning in case there is something where the high school is sold for development, the old high school, and we have a field that's in place almost similar to what soccer has done on Sanford Road as well, where you can see that, I don't know how familiar everybody is, but like you'll see that the JV team has been playing there as well, and they're able to utilize those fields as part of the town. I think that could be a very similar situation here as well. I think it's a full benefit for everybody to kind of get on board and help with this.
John Bell?
Yeah, Betty, I coached for quite a while. I see the need for fields for the kids. Even with the old high school, they still don't have enough fields. So if it's possible, I would move this for the amount requested to the public meeting next month.
Is there a second to that?
Yes,
Tim
Dale Weber,
Larson
I will.
seconds it.
We'll discuss it. He's put a motion on the floor. If there's a second, then we'll discuss it.
I will second that, Dale Weber.
Okay, so now for discussion, my point is, I guess what you've done is you've said that you want a matching grant. You shouldn't really have used that term in a sense, and I think Mark has jumped on that. Basically, what you want is 150,000 added to your grant in order to be able to pay for this field. So that's a better way to approach it. We wouldn't approach it as a matching grant because it isn't a matching grant. That's
Understood.
one concept. Anybody else have any comments? Anybody from outside? Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please. Tim Caton.
Question on the motion.
Oh,
Are we doing, what's the amount?
150.
do?
150.
Okay. Tim Caton, aye.
John,
Bell, aye.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah,
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark.
Is he mad at me?
Betty Slade, aye. Unanimous. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes. And Mark, are you gone? He maybe got cut off. Anyway, so we will see you in January.
Great.
Jim,
Much appreciated.
I wanted to tell the people that I met you when you were very young. Do you remember you and your cousin did the work for us trying to move those stones into different cemeteries?
I do. I remember that very well. My cousin Thomas. Yes.
Your father donated the truck and the trailer and his family.
Absolutely. Yep, of course.
So thank you very much. I haven't thanked you. It was 20 years ago.
Not a problem, and always appreciate it. Thank you so much for fitting us in today, and Tim for
Betty,
answering your phone. Appreciate it.
Yes, Betty, I apologize for leaving quickly, but I had to take my dinner out of the oven for the 3rd time tonight.
We voted, except for you, to pass it on to at 150.
Well, I approve.
Okay, so that is unanimous. Thank you very much for waiting, everybody.
Thank you all for your time. And if I could say one last thing, Tim, you mentioned during the recreation presentation, possible pickleball courts in the future. We have lots of space for you at our fields.
Yeah,
Lots of
we're gonna
space.
start working on that.
So-
We got to get together with you on the property and look at it.
Whenever you want. This is town land, this is town property, this is town space, and we have the space for you. So come talk to me, or I'll come
How
talk
about
to you.
playgrounds,
What's that?
skate parks,
We have space,
something to look into. You're protected a little bit better.
right?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all.
They'll
Yeah,
be grinding on a
all your
dugout.
years
if
of
you do that.
service.
Thank you.
I
Wonderful.
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good
Bye.
night, everyone. Bye-bye.
It's late, isn't it? Boy, we've never had a meeting.
Almost past my bedtime,
I
Betty.
know. So I was wondering if, so number 8 is purchase of scanner by CPC. Is anybody?
Aye.
I make a motion, we approve it. John Bell.
John Bell, second by
Jim Gillespie,
Tim
second.
Gillespie. I'm sorry, I have to do this, guys. The law requires it. Tim Caton,
Tim Caton, aye.
John
John Bell, aye.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Tim Gillespie,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah,
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark,
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. That is unanimous. Okay, number 9, and Mark, this is relative. As you all know, we all agreed that Eric Drake would come in and do a preservation restriction on the Bell School as soon as it was finished. Jenny has said it's ready. And so Eric will start in January. He will come down and we've got the contract, everything's all done. I just am announcing this and announcing it to you.
Okay, yeah, great.
You will,
Thank you.
you will communicate with him. I hope you will take this on. It shouldn't be much work. I mean, he'll do the work.
Well, yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. And I don't, well, he knows how to reach me, I presume. So once he has a draft, he can send
Yes.
it to me.
Yes, and I'll keep it. Okay, the number 10 is I've redone the website, the web page for the website by changing some things, taking some stuff out because it was duplicated, and adding the the later dates so they're up to date. I'd like you all to use that. They're designing a new website for the town. Carol Freitas is doing that actually. So we wanted to get this done before that happened. I'd like for you to take a look at that and see if there's anything else you think we should be putting in and then volunteering to do it. Or if there are any mistakes. So I don't have any correspondence. List of bills. Maria, I think there they are. Do I have to go? You want to look through all? I think you've seen all of them.
Mhm.
Do you want me to go through each one of them?
No,
No.
we can all read.
They're all have been approved. John, I keep in touch with John Bell and I go through these for the projects. I have to get a second from the liaison. So all of these have been approved and I'd like a motion for the town, for the CPC to approve these bills.
Tim Gillespie makes that motion.
Dale Weber seconds that motion.
All right. Tim, any discussion? Any questions? Tim Caton,
Tim Caton, aye.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
John,
John Bell, aye.
Tim,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Deborah,
Deborah Chialfi, aye.
Mark,
Mark Schmidt, aye.
myself, Betty Slade, aye. That's unanimous. The next, any other business? Anything? No.
Just one really quick thing.
Sure, John.
The Sanford Road Schoolhouse is the construction there is going well. They want to put a historic plaque up on the front in the front, like a historic marker. And Tony had asked me, should he talk with the historical commission for the wording on that?
Yes.
You know, I think there's a procedure for doing that
Yeah.
for plaques. There's some language about what you're supposed to do when there's a plaque involved. I can look into that, John.
But you
Okay.
have the historical commission, there's a form
Yeah,
that you fill out.
yeah, there's a procedure.
Do you want to put it on the wall or do you want to put it?
He wants to put it like a marker next to the road. Like a
Oh.
standalone marker.
Oh.
That's a whole different thing. Those
Oh,
are,
I thought it was a plaque. I thought
No,
a
he
plaque on
wants
the
the
building is
wording on
different.
he wants to work with someone on a specific word and explaining the
Huh.
significance of that school and where it was originally located.
Oh, that's more historical society, isn't it?
no.
No?
We have
Historical commission?
The information is on the Westport Historic Inventory, the Macris. I'll
All
let
right,
you know,
I'll dig it up for him.
but they're very expensive. Those plaques.
Yeah, he knows that.
I mean, like $1,200.
Yeah, I know. I ended up doing that one on Sodom Road and that was about 1,200.
Wow.
Yeah, they're expensive. So, but the Macris, I'll send you the Macris. I hope I
Okay,
remember.
all right.
If I don't, let me know. Okay. So the next meeting is January 9th. And I'm hoping everybody will attend. It's very important because that's our big meeting. It will be advertised. We may have people come. I will have some of the same people come. And if you have any questions about the projects, I think you should not hesitate to ask the people who propose them. We will be hearing from the church, I'm sure. But thank you very much. Have a very happy Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And next meeting, I will be in Texas.
Hooray.
Travel safe, Betty. Travel
Yes,
safe.
have safe travels.
Yeah,
We
Merry
will
Christmas,
enjoy yourself.
everyone.
Text.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.